You know how some symbols are just everywhere? We see them all the time, but we never really stop and think, hey, what does that actually mean? Well, today we're going to do just that. We're going to unpack one of the most ancient and powerful symbols out there, a story all about light, power, and pressure.
I'm willing to bet you've seen this before. It's the official emblem of the State of Israel. And at its heart, you've got two main things, right? A 7-branched lampstand, that's a menorah, and it's got an olive branch on either side. It looks so clean, so modern, almost like it was designed by a committee. But here's the thing, it wasn't.
Believe it or not, the origin of this emblem goes way back. We're talking about a 2,500-year-old prophetic vision. It's this mysterious, powerful image that tells a really profound story about leadership, about balance, and about survival. So what is that story? What is this ancient vision trying to tell us? All right, let's get into it.
Okay, so to really get this emblem, we have to go back to the source. And the source is a vision from the biblical book of Zechariah. This is where the whole image comes from. And it's important to remember, it didn't start as a logo. It started as a living, breathing revelation.
So, the prophet Zechariah has this vision, right? He sees a golden menorah, but the really interesting part is how it's being lit. It's not some person coming along to fill it with oil. No way. Instead, there are 2 living olive trees standing right next to it, and they are constantly, and I mean constantly, feeding pure oil through these golden pipes, keeping the flame burning forever. It's a never-ending source of light. How cool is that?
All right, so first things first, let's talk about that centerpiece. The menorah itself is a huge deal. It's this powerful symbol of divine wisdom, of enlightenment, of the light of the Torah. It's basically the spiritual illumination of an entire nation. But here's the catch. A lamp is pretty useless without fuel, right? And that, my friends, is where those 2 trees come in.
So you've got to be asking, what's up with these magical, self-fueling trees? What do they represent? Well, lucky for us, the vision itself gives us the answer. And spoiler alert, they aren't just plants. They're symbols for 2 very different and absolutely crucial types of human leadership.
The text actually says the trees are the 2 anointed ones. Now, back in the ancient world, anointing with olive oil was a big deal. That's how you marked someone out as a leader for a really important, sacred job. So the key takeaway here is that these trees, they represent the 2 fundamental pillars of leadership that a nation needs to keep its spiritual light burning.
And this just lays it out so perfectly. On one side, you've got the king. He's all about state authority, law, and order, the practical day-to-day running of the country. And on the other side, you've got the Kohen, the high priest. He represents spiritual authority, morality, peace, the nation's connection to something bigger. We're talking 2 totally different jobs, 2 totally different roles, but both are absolutely essential.
But here's where it gets even deeper. The vision isn't just saying, hey, you need both of these guys. Nope. The real message is all about their relationship. It's a vision about a very delicate and incredibly important balance.
So why the separation, right? Why have 2 leaders side by side, both feeding the very same light? Why not just have one all-powerful ruler to handle everything? Well, as it turns out, history gives us some pretty clear and pretty stark answers to that question.
Okay, let's look at a couple of case studies here. First up, King David. He's remembered as one of the greatest kings. Why? Because he respected the line between his power and the authority of the prophet and priest. He had worldly power for sure, but he actually listened to spiritual guidance, and his kingdom thrived. Now, let's contrast that with the story of Hanukkah. You have the Maccabees. They were priests who led this amazing revolt, but then they made themselves kings. They basically merged the 2 roles into one. And the result? It was a disaster. Within just a few generations, their dynasty became corrupt and was totally destroyed. The vision was basically a huge warning sign. When one power swallows the other, the light goes out. Simple as that.
But wait, there's more. There's another, even deeper layer to this whole metaphor. So far, we've been talking about the trees as symbols of power. But now, let's zoom in and look at the fruit itself. The choice of the olive was definitely not an accident, and it tells us something much more personal and much more universal.
I mean, think about it. Why olives? The Bible is just packed with symbolic plants. You've got grapevines, figs, palm trees. So why were olives chosen to be the source of this eternal light? The answer is fascinating. It has less to do with how they grow and everything to do with what you have to do to them.
Just think for a second about how you get oil from an olive. You can't just give it a gentle squeeze. It doesn't work like that. First, the fruit is literally beaten from the branches with sticks. then is gathered up off the ground, and finally it is completely crushed and pressed under immense, overwhelming pressure. It's a pretty violent, tough process, but it's the only way to get that precious oil.
And that brings us to the core of it. The olive is a powerful symbol of resilience. The lesson here is that its most precious product, the oil that literally creates light, is only produced through intense hardship. The struggle isn't the end of the road, it's the very thing that starts the illumination. Out of all that pressure comes light.
Okay, so let's put all these pieces together now. What we have isn't just a static image, like a logo. It's a whole story. It's a dynamic narrative about how you create and how you sustain light in the world.
And as one source puts it so well, this symbol isn't some dusty relic from the past. It's a living dynamic. Think of it like a blueprint for an ongoing process, a story that's meant to be lived out, day in and day out.
So what is this living story really? Well, it's a story about continuity, about having a never-ending fuel source for wisdom. It's a story about balance, that tricky but essential dance between worldly power and spiritual integrity. It's a story about resilience, understanding that true strength can come from being crushed. And maybe most importantly, it's a story of hope. It's this profound promise that no matter how intense the pressure gets, you can always produce light.
So this symbol may have started as a vision for an entire nation, but that metaphor of the olive, that speaks to every single one of us. And it leaves us with a really powerful question to think about. Where in your own life does the pressure, the hardship, the struggle end up producing your greatest light?